also set higher limits and standards for the servants of God. But all in all, they're just normal people like us. So today we are going to talk on how to relate to them in the normal living standards of human being. In this episode, Not I Shepherd. I'm your host, Leonard Kingali. And today, for our guest, Karibu Sana Kwanza.
Thank you.
And let me give you this moment to briefly introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Erastus Weru. I was born and raised in Nyeri. I'm a firstborn out of 6 children. I have 1 brother and 4 sisters. My father went to be with the Lord about, now it should be about 15 years ago, this year. But my mother is still there. Yeah. So pretty that is who I am. I'm married. I'm married to one Susan Weru, and between us we have 2 daughters. The firstborn is turning 18 years next month, and the secondborn has just turned 15 beginning of this month. Yeah.
That's really amazing. So, could you give us a bit childhood background about yourself?
Well, as I said, I grew up in Nyeri, in a rural setup. My parents were subsistence farmers, and my dad also had a business, transport business. He had a pickup for hire. So that's who my parents were, and I do thank God because those days when I was growing up, I cannot say I had some challenges that I hear some people talk about, and especially those who grew up in a rural setup. My father was a very, very committed family man. He made sure that we had the basics. We didn't have much, but we had the basics. We ate well. We went to school without much challenges of school fees. And yeah, so I do thank God for that. My mom also worked very hard in the farm. But I must say that as children, we also contributed a lot to our upbringing, especially as far as food production was concerned, because we dug, we tilled the farm, we planted, we did the weeding, we harvested. So really, quite a percentage, if we can put the food we ate into percentages, I would say 30% we produced it ourselves as children. I went to school without shoes those days in the 80s, not because I didn't have shoes, but because majority of the children in school did not have shoes, and so for uniformity purposes, it was actually illegal to wear shoes in the primary school that I went to. You are just not allowed. I remember going to school in the rain, being rained on. I remember waking up early and listening to some songs, those days urging us to read hard, because after the end of education we shall get good jobs. I remember running home for lunch. Our school never cooked food for us, nor did we carry lunch. The trade was you do the morning session and then you run home. Within 50 minutes you run home and come back to school. And my home was about 2.5 kilometers away. So you can imagine 2.5 kilometers in about 50 minutes, 5 kilometers, eat lunch and all that. I played with the children in the village. But my parents were also a bit strict, so I didn't have a lot of freedom apart from my immediate neighborhood. I was not allowed to go very far from home or to play with children who are far from home. I had to be home pretty early. Even when I was a big boy, like even when I was in high school, I had to be home before 6. I did KCPE in the year 1986. We were the second lot to do KCPE, and I passed. I went to the then provincial schools called Chinga Boys, still in Nyeri, in Udaya, where I was for about 4 years. And after I did KCPE, KCSE now, in Form 4, again I passed and I joined Nairobi University. Yes.
So your journey in education seems it was a bit difficulty, minding that the law was a bit against most of the things you guys were doing. So how did it affect you mentally, emotionally, and also understanding you didn't have the freedom after coming out of school to go out and socialize with your friends?
You know, I think the challenges were many. First, I would say that my parents were not well educated. My father dropped from school in class 7. I think my mom dropped from school in Form 1. And they got married pretty early. I keep telling my mother up to date that she's only 19 years older than me. So I didn't have the kind of parents who would encourage you as far as education is concerned. Yes, they will tell you to work hard, but they are not the kind who could help me a lot with homework. They are not the kind of parents who could help me to visualize a career and what I needed to do to get into this kind of a career. In school, especially in primary school, again, the system was very much against the student. I usually tell my children that public schools, especially in our time, I'm not very sure currently, but during our time, public schools were not meant for the below average girls. It is maybe slightly above average and way above average, because even the teachers were not that, and we were called names. We were called names, and especially for these children who are not understanding. I thank God. I would consider myself as maybe just slightly above average student in primary school, but just kept being punished out of anything and nothing and everything. We never knew when the teacher is going to just enter and beat you. Sometimes we try to associate it either with the color of the dress they are wearing or the shirt the male teachers are wearing or a certain trouser. This is a time that they will beat us. They will beat us a lot. So it was not. It was not easy as far as being encouraged. And so I would say, up to class 4, I actually did not know why do we go to school. No, nobody bothered to. Why do we go to school? What is the importance of school? In fact, I would wake up very early to prepare to go to school. And the one thing that kept ringing in my mind between class 1 and class 4 was, who came up with the education system? What was he thinking? Why separate small children with their parents? So I would say I didn't have a sense of direction, what I'm doing in school. And I remember in class 4, because again those are the days that students used to be forced to repeat classes if you have not reached a certain grade. I remember in class 4, I was the last to be allowed to proceed to class 5. And I think that's the time it occurred to me that actually, unless I work hard, I will repeat. So even when I went to the 5, and I started working hard, because I remember first time in class 5, being number 7, which was my best performance since class 1. It was not so much because of what I wanted to do. It was more out of, I don't want to repeat. I don't want to be forced to repeat. You know, I know I struggled in Form 1. Even if I passed study, I remember struggling in Form. I was one of the top noisemakers in the class. I was always being beaten. The deputy did not like seeing me because I could not keep quiet. I don't know whether it is the pastoral gift of talking and interacting with people that was coming out, but at least I know I never kept quiet. And again, going to Form 2, my marks were very bad, very, very bad. And I remember my dad really, I don't know how to put it in English, but just summarizing me, giving me his mind, a part of his mind. And I must say it is in Form 2 that I woke out. Because I remember once I got into Form 2, I never again went below number 3. But from 1 going to Form 2, I was among the last in my class. But when my dad gave me a part of his mind, and he had never quarreled me. My dad was not quarrelsome, but this evening he really quarreled me because of my performance. I just became a serious student. I became a serious student. I focused on books, and from there, I remember from 2 I was always number 1, 2, 3, and I never went below that until I finished Form 4. But you asked about how it affected. I do think that one of the impacts of the kind of schooling that we went through, or I went through personally, especially primary school, and even high school, Form 1 and Form 2, because I was beaten a lot because of making noise, I think the issue of esteem, I found myself struggling with self-esteem because of being called names. When you have made an academic mistake, you are called names, you are called foolish, you are called cows. It was just a bit hard. Yeah.
Yes. So before you came to understand the meaning of education, what are some of the things you ever did until today you regret?
Well, to be very honest, the things I did that I regret today were done after I had finished Form 4. Because of the kind of parents I had, there was no room of you can do something wrong. The fear alone of, for example, being sent home because of doing something wrong in school could not allow me to even imagine, that I can deviate from what my mother, my father had always advocated for. For example, my father did not used to smoke. He didn't used to drink. And those are the 2 things that boys used to do, especially after finishing primary school and going through initiation. I come from a community that practices initiation, especially after class 8. So those are the things that boys used to do. But I could not even bring it to my mind that I can, for example, smoke. Because my parents will tell me they will hang me, So those kind of behavior that I regret came after I finished high school. Because now after finishing high school and passing to go to the university, I just thought, come on, now I'm mature now. I have finished school. I have passed. I will go to university. And there was a lot of idle time, if I may put it that way, because we were the first group to finish in high school and wait for more than 1 year before going to the university, because when we did Form 4, the following year, which we were waiting to go to the university, they introduced fees in the university. They introduced pay as you eat cafeteria system, and the universities went on one of the worst strikes that they had ever experienced. So they were closed for more than 8 months. So a lot of idle time, feeling mature, I am big, I'm an adult now, my parents cannot beat me now, I'm a big man, bad influence. And one thing led to another. I started smoking, I started drinking, the traditional brew from, Moratina, that's the time I deviated from the law. Even if I had gotten saved in Form 1, I had worked right in high school. Form 4, I was the senior chairman. But after I finished Form 4, I lost it. I think I didn't know what to do with this so much free time. For the first time since I was born, I found myself with so much free time, no homework. You wake up, apart from just tilling the land here, there, that's a time that I deviated. And it wasn't until second year in campus, actually end of second year in campus, that I rededicated my life to the Lord. So I think today, if there's a duration of time, I look back and regret and wish that I can go back and delete. It is the year after finishing high school, my first year in campus, my second year. I even don't know whether you'd like to hear how it was bad. It was bad.
It's okay. You can share. You can share with us.
I don't think there is an entertainment joint in this city that I didn't enter in my first year in campus. I don't think there is a campus strike that I didn't join. I don't think there is a time students drew stones that I didn't draw stones. The other day, I was just reading about the former president's voice, Weru.
Yes.
And how he punished the dissidents, and especially university students, in the 80s and early 90s. And, I almost shook, because some of the things we were doing as university students in first year, I think it never occurred to me how the system could have reacted. I remember there's a time we called a meeting in campus and slaughtered a cockerel, symbolizing the death of Kanu. And I was looking back. Actually, it was just this year. And I was like, oh my goodness, if this is what Mo used to do. And we were slaughtering a cockerel, saying this is the head of Kanu and the head of Moi in campus. I'm lucky, because I know there are some university students who died. There are some who were put in prison and never managed to finish their degree. There are some who finished their degree much later, after Moi had retired and Kibaki came in as the president. So I look at some of those things and it's like, hey, God favored me. There are some funny places I went in this town to have fun as a first year student. And the fun, is just drinking and dancing the whole night. In fact, the other day I was showing my girls the songs we used to dance to. And they're like, Dad, you could do this. Anyway, but some of those joints, I don't know. I remember like a place in Latema Road, off Tomboya Street. We used to go. It was called Modern Green, and we stopped going there after a university student was stabbed to death. And we became afraid. And it's like, hey, if a student can die in Modern Green, let's stop going there. But you see, the reason as to why somebody would stab a university student is because we were very boastful. You know, once you drink, you know, you become very reckless. We were rude. We thought we owned the country. You know?
Yeah.
That time, I think there were about 40,000 students in the university. So when you're in university, you really felt big. You know, it's not like now when there are so many universities. So there are many things that I did that time that I just look back and I wish I can just cut. I did not pissed 3 years. You know, the year after high school, first and second year in campus. I wasted a lot of money. You know, my father was so generous with the pocket money, and I was getting help. I was getting boom, as we used to call it. Eh? You know, so I had money, but I wasted. I wish I didn't waste that. You know, it's so terrible mistakes. Terrible mistakes.
So in those moments, have you ever had a confrontation with the cops, with the police officers?
No. The only confrontation I have had with the police is traffic offenses, long after I had left campus. But I only remember being stopped by police in along Kenyatta Avenue. We were coming back to campus very late at night, way past midnight, and we were just shouting "Comrade power, comrade power." You know, the police just let us pass. But during strikes, we had confrontation with the police. We used to fight with the police. We used to throw stones, and I really enjoyed throwing stones at the police. You should have seen us carrying water, even in the paper bags, because we knew once you throw stones at police, they are going to throw tear gas, and once you wash your face, you know. So I used to enjoy those ones, but I never had a direct confrontation. But there are, some of my colleagues were beaten thoroughly, senseless. I remember coming to Kenyatta National Hospital to visit a colleague who had been beaten until for almost a week he could not speak, you know, because of the way he had been nyoroshwad by police. And you know, we were actually together. I just managed to to outrun him. And when the police caught up with him, they stopped pursuing me. They arrested him. So I was quite riotous in campus. 2 years, 2 good years. Yes.
So having engaged with the traffic police officers, as the saying goes, whatever the right hand does, the left hand should not say.
Yes.
Have you ever bribed a police officer?
I'm so lucky that I have never. I say I'm lucky because I know there are so many believers who have bribed, and I don't know what they were put through. You know, I have been caught. In fact, even today, today I jumped light by mistake. I honestly was not. In fact, when I was deteriorating, I was telling the police, "There's no way I can jump light, and you are standing there." So I explained. I managed just this morning. I explained myself out of the situation, and he had mentioned I need to give him tea. But as we continued talking, and he came to know I'm a pastor here in Nairobi Baptist, he just let me go. I think there have been other 2 other times I have been arrested on, actually 3, on the wrong side of the law. There's a time I was arrested because of speaking on the phone when I was driving. There's a time I was arrested because of driving without headlights. I had just left here and there was so much light outside. I could not tell that my lights were not on. And then I was arrested again because I didn't have a triangle. The phone and driving without putting on the headlights, I managed to ask for forgiveness, and the policemen agreed. The triangle, I had to go to court, and I was fined 1,000 shillings. I was arrested in Naivasha, and I had to drive all the way to Naivasha the following day. to appear in the court. So at least I can confidently say I've never bribed a police officer. Yes.
So vile tu ulienda kotini haukulala ndani before uende hiyo kotini?
No. Because I was arrested. It was in the evening. I went. I paid 3,000 shillings cash bail. Then I went the following day. But when the charge was read by the magistrate, and I accepted, and he fined me 1,000 shillings. To tell you the truth, I don't know where policemen came from. They grabbed me and now threw me in a cell, in a withholding cell where people are held before you can pay your fine. And then, but I had been told that, so I had gone with one of the pastors here, who went and paid the 1,000 shillings in the National Bank, Naivasha, and he brought the receipt. And so that's the closest I came to being in a cell. So I can say I have been in a police cell for a few hours, but during the day, sio kulala.
So having that life of a teenager, always confrontation, misbehaving, how did you come to meet your wife?
Well, let me say that I rededicated my life. When I was in second year, I met a Christian organization called the Navigators in campus. Navigators disciple students in campus. They evangelize and disciple students in campus. And I met a young man called Mike who developed an interest in me, and we started reading the Bible together. So he would come every Friday, read the Bible with me and my roommate. So every week on Friday, and in the course of the week, he would give us assignment to read. There used to be 3 chapters of the Bible every day. And remember, in high school, I was a believer. I got saved when I was in Form 1. So when Mike suggested we can be reading the Word of God together, I agreed. Even if I continued with my riotous life, I agreed. And so I think it was in second year, in second term, that as I read the Bible, I read the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and it hit me where Paul says, everything is permissible for me, but I will not be enslaved by what I'm doing. And elsewhere he says in the same book, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. And the Holy Spirit actually used that scripture to make me reflect about my life, what I was doing, how far I have deviated from my faith, about my parents, the way my father does not drink, does not smoke, and the money I drink is the one who gives me. So that scripture helped me to really reflect. And I realized that one, I have been mastered by drinking and smoking and other things. I was engaging in something that was not beneficial. And I remember telling a colleague of mine one evening that I am going back to my father's house. And that's how I rededicated my life to the Lord. And when I rededicated my life to the Lord, because again we had read the Bible with Mike for over a year, every week, I had so much substance. I had so much of the Word of God in my life. Combine that with my high school experience. I used to read the Bible a lot in high school. I used to preach a lot. I used to evangelize. I used to lead Bible studies. So I had content. And immediately I recommitted my life to the Lord. I just started evangelizing and reaching out to the university students. So basically I joined the Navigators in what they were doing to reach out to university students. And so when I finished campus, or rather, maybe I go back a bit. Okay. Before I joined fourth year, I looked back. Again, God helped me to reflect. And I realized that perhaps there are so many students who are in the university who are like me, who was working with the Lord in high school. You finish, you are a teenager, you feel as if you have overcome the world, and you deviate, and you just get lost. And God gave me a burden for one university student, two high school students, just wondering if somebody had developed interest in me when I was in high school and had discipled me and mentored me, would I still have deviated when I finished high school? And it occurred to me that high school students need to be followed up, they need to be established in faith, because so many get saved in high school, but after high school, they don't continue studying firm in the faith. And so I made a promise to the Lord that after finishing campus, I would want to commit 1 year to just work within my church back at home and work with the youth, those in high school, those in the university. And so when I finished, that's what I started doing. Immediately I finished. But even before 1 month was over, I was invited by the navigators to be trained as far as ministry was concerned. And I just thought, this is in line with what I want to do for the next 1 year. But now when I joined the navigators for that training, one thing led to another, and I found myself with the navigators for about almost 10 years, And it is when I was working with the navigators in Nairobi that my wife also was working with the navigators in Machakos. And then he was transferred. She worked in a law firm as an administrator. So she was transferred in the same law firm in their branch in Nairobi. So when she came, of course, she just looked for the navigators office here and the navigator community. And that's how I basically met my wife. We used to go to Alliance Girls and Boys for Bible study. And I was also, I think, looking for a wife material at that time. So even as you were going, spending a lot of time in the bus and going and coming back, a relationship developed. So basically, that's how I met my wife.
So before you met her and before you came to know Christ, how can you define your dating life?
Oh, it was horrible.
Explain.
It was horrible. In primary school, I never had a girlfriend. Secondary school, I had a girlfriend that I didn't have. The girlfriend I had in high school was actually my neighbor. We had grown together. Her parents were as strict as mine, and so we used to write letters to each other in high school. So at least, so that I could at least receive letters from a girl in a girls' school, and she could also receive letters from. I usually tell my girls how I wrote a letter to one of my class 8 classmates who had gone to another sister school, not very near where I had gone. And I asked her if we could date. But when we met at home during holidays, I could not gather the courage to tell her, I sent you a letter. And so we met. I never brought up that issue. She reminded me after we had finished Form 4. She said, Erastus is a letter you wrote to me. I waited for you to tell me what you wanted when we met at home. So that was my duty in high school. But of course, in campus, I dated again with no intention of getting married to these girls. So we did 6 months, we part ways, 1 year, we part ways. When I was finishing Form 4, no, not Form 4, 4th year actually, I had a consistent girlfriend in campus. But again, I knew in my heart I didn't want to marry this girl. And I usually tell young adults, even in the Westlands, how On the day of my graduation, I had to run away from her because she wanted to come for my graduation, even all the way to Nyeri. And I didn't know what would I tell my parents. I will say, you are who, you know? So I had to hide away. I had to hide from her on that day. You know, we were together, and anyway, I ran away from her. Then we did a Bible study with another gentleman. The Bible studies was entitled Trusting God for a Wife or a Spouse. And when we were reading this Bible study, the Bible study leader, because one of the questions was about defrauding one another and how we should not defraud one another, he explained to us, what does defrauding mean? And you know, I don't know why he did this up to date, because I believe he didn't know that I had this girlfriend in campus. But he told us, you know, defrauding is, let's say for example, Erastus, before he finished campus, you had a girlfriend in campus whom you visit, you have coffee, you have tea, you take her out, you have chips, just the things that I used to do. And when you're doing all this, in your heart you know you have no intention of ever getting married. You're just having fun. You know, you are creating expectations in her. And that's what defrauding is. And I still remember my other colleagues, because they knew this girl. After the Bible study, as we were going home, they laughed and they laughed and they laughed at me. They enjoyed me. And that's how I stopped dating with that girl. She was called Mweni. She's talking from Ukambani. My wife is from Ukambani. I met Mweni years later. She had now graduated. She had done her master's. In fact, she was doing PhD, and I was going to do driving. We met somewhere in Tomboya Street, and she was so surprised. She was very jovial and outgoing. So she saw me, she was happy. Hey, how are you? Where did you go? You know, got up, just on the street. And at one point she told me, I could say she was married by the fact that she had a ring. And I asked her, oh, I can see you got married. She told me, yeah, I got married. I got married to this guy from Kiambu. Then she added, it had to be a Kikuyu because you just disappeared. So anyway, that was my dating life. Especially before I rededicated my life to the Lord. And even after rededicating my life to the Lord, that's how I met Mweni when I was working with the Lord. We dated, but in my heart, I didn't feel the push that this is a girl I would want to get married, but I was just enjoying hanging around her. And again, it's like showing other guys that I also have a girlfriend. You know,
you are a man.
Yes. And after that, after I stopped going to campus to visit Mweni, I actually now told the Lord, I want to take a break from dating.
Yes.
I want to take a break completely from dating, so that I can get it right the next time I am dating. Because I just agreed that I think dating life, I have been neither here nor there. You know?
Yeah.
And it is when I took that break for about 1 or 2 years that I met Susan, my wife.
That's a really inspiring story. So now, what sort of profession were you undertaking in university?
I took a BA in anthropology. Anthropology is a study of the prehistoric man. Yes.
So why did you leave that line to to come to the other side of being a preacher?
As I mentioned, when I rededicated my life to the Lord, I reflected back. I looked at the journey I had walked up to that time and how the grace of God had played in my life. I looked at the mistakes I had made in my life. I thought about other students who had come to university, having been saved, and now in the university they are living a life of non-believers. Because even my roommate had the same story I had. He was saved in high school, fell that 1 year that he waited, joined the campus, and he was also living recklessly, and I could count so many students, and as I mentioned earlier, that is what gave me a burden for the first time to actually consider reaching out to students, both high school, so that those who are saved in high school can be well established at the campus, so that they don't get lost when they come to the university. So I decided, let me commit myself 1 year to work with my local church, So when I finished campus, I went to my local church and I told the pastor I want to volunteer with the youth 1 year. And I started a Bible study. To the first time, my local church was hearing of a Bible study. We started doing Bible study materials from the navigators. In navigators, we used to memorize scriptures a lot. So I taught them to memorize scriptures. I taught them how to read through the Bible. I taught them quite a number of just what I had been taught by the navigators. And it is when I was doing that, in fact I didn't do it for long, that the navigators came and asked me that if I would want them to train me, if I could commit about 6 months to be trained for ministry, before I ventured out to start looking for a job or anything like that. And because it's a burden I had had for some time, and it's a burden I had now even started actualizing, I agreed with the navigators. But the training did not take 1 month, 6 months. It took 1 year. Then I was told, now that you have gone through 1 year, we have another training that takes 2 years. Would you sign for it? And I agreed. And by the time I was finishing the third year of training by the navigators, I just felt, yeah, this is it. Ministry is for me. So I worked for some time with the navigators for about 5-6 years after the training. Then remember, when I was in campus, my desire was to work in my local church. So that desire to be in a local church never died. So when I was still working with the navigators, I thought, I would want to work in a local church. I would want to experience a local church, Yeah. And I tried several churches, and finally, Nairobi Baptist picked me for an internship for 1 year, and the navigators told me, I was very close with the director at that time. He told me, Erastus, I know your heart. You go. I'm not even going to tell you to resign from the navigators. You go, experience the church. And in case you feel that's not the place, you come back. So I came, and for some time, the door for the navigators was always open for me to go back. I felt I had insurance. If Bapo does not work out, I could always. So for some time, but it worked out. And I like what I do. I did like what I do. Yeah.
Now, that's really wonderful. Now, for most people out there, to relate to them to a pastor, like to them, a pastor is a superior being. It's not a normal human being. What are those qualities people can read and understand that, yeah, this is just a normal person like me?
Actually, it is so wrong to think of a pastor as superior or this man of God. who is above everyone else. And I think the society has created that perception. And also some pastors have created that perception to the society, that a pastor is above everyone else. I think Paul describes himself to the Corinthians as their servant. Jesus came as one to serve. That's why he washed his disciples' feet. So a pastor is not a superior being. It's just someone with a calling to serve the people of God. It's someone with a heart for God, who is willing to be used by the Lord as the Lord wishes. Pastors go through the same things that everyone else goes through. We quarrel with our wives. we conflict with our wives. We conflict with our children. Our children really, like currently, my children are teenagers, both of them. And let me tell you, I thank God that before they became teenagers, we invested a lot of time in them with my wife. But to bring up teenagers, I usually tell them, I can see why people struggle with their own teenagers, but I will not strangle you, because I also know what I took my parents through. So I understand what it is to be teenagers. So what I'm saying is, when we go to our houses, we are just like any other husband, like any other man who is married with children. By the way, your children careless whether you are a pastor or not. They don't give a damn. To them, you are just dad, and it is dad. I don't have a pen. Dad,
Yeah.
That's what matters to them. Dad, I want this. Dad, that's what matters to them. Even to your spouse, you're not a pastor to your spouse. You are the husband, or if you are a lady pastor to your spouse, you are the wife. A full stop. When you go home, you play the role of a husband and a father, or a wife if you are a lady pastor. We go through the same struggles that people go through, like now, one of the things on top of my mind is college fees for my daughter, So the same thing, the same struggles that any other person, goes through. How do I guide my children on the careers to pick? How do I guide them through the turbulent years they are in? When boys are starting to notice them, how do I guide them? What do I tell them? I share my experiences with girls when I was their age, Yeah, but otherwise, when it comes to the relationship between the pastor and the congregation, I do think that perhaps it is us pastors to calm down, because of the perception that has been created by some pastors or the men of God. There are so many ministries led by men of God who do not even carry their Bibles to the pulpit, who cannot carry their bags from the parking to their office, and I think that that's a perception that people have of a modern day pastor. But I do think that a pastor is first and foremost a servant, a servant of people, a servant of the people that you are preaching to, a servant of the couples that you are mentoring, a servant of the couples that you are taking through premarital, a servant of the men and the women in the church. A pastor is the one who gives his ear to the people that you are shepherding, that you are pastoring. So for me, I would not say, and I know personally I have really tried to shed that thing of yes, pastor, uko huko na sisi tuko. And I also thank God for Nairobi Baptist Church. It is one of the church that I know the relationship between the pastor and the pastor is really narrow. You know, really narrow. Yeah.
Wow. That's quite amazing. So we are really thankful for being able to share with us such informative story, and we are very glad to have you. Karibu sana.
Thank you. I'm also glad for the opportunity to just share part of my life with you. I hope it will be helpful to someone.
It will. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And to our viewers out there, we are really glad for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe, share, comment, and like our pages. Karibuni sana.